Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Feelings of shock and disgust continue to emerge after APTN recently released a video of an RCMP officer interviewing an Indigenous teen who reported an alleged sexual assault. Many leaders and grassroots organizations are calling for a review. But as Brittany Hobson shows us, one group is actually hoping to team with the RCMP for what may be a learning experience.
The tactics used in this 2012 police interrogation are being called disgusting and horrifying. But the video is also raising questions about how the RCMP treats young women reporting sexual assaults. Little Warriors, an Alberta-based organization working with sexual abuse survivors, is offering to develop a custom training program for the RCMP.
Our clinical team is work on developing really trauma-informed practices that could be taught to the RCMP officers so that their interviews are done in a trauma-informed way.
Glory Meldrum founded Little Warriors. She says the video is a clear indication on why many survivors don't report their abuse. At one point, the officer asked the Indigenous teen this.
Because I need to know, were you at all turned on during this at all, even a little bit?
No.
Physically, you weren't at all responsive to his advances, even maybe subconsciously?
Maybe subconsciously, but no, not. I was really scared.
When people are interrogated in that manner, it's re-traumatizing to that person. So not only often are sexual assault survivors traumatized the first time with the sexual assault, it's not right to re-traumatize them in a situation like this. And that's exactly what I think happened in this interrogation.
In a statement, the RCMP said new training for officers is a priority, and they are in the process of developing an external review model. But Meldrum questions the validity of their claims.
When I looked at their statement that, training is a priority, but I had to ask myself, this video that we're all seeing now is 7 years old. Where is that training at?
Meldrum commends the survivor for coming forward and says she has paved the way for others.
Is that I see a lot more support. Like if you go on and look at any of the comments, any of the interrogation, it's pretty much 99% in support that this wasn't right. And I don't think 5 years ago we would have saw that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I need you to be a little more honest with me about some of this.
I am being honest. I didn't.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Kelowna RCMP are under fire for the way they interrogated the teen who reported the alleged sexual assault. It happened in 2012, but the police interview became public this week after APTN obtained it. For more, we're joined by former interim leader for the Federal Conservative Party, Rona Ambrose. Ms. Ambrose, appreciate you taking some time for us here today. What did you think of when you saw the video?
I was disgusted, I hope every single person that saw it was. What we saw here was the young Aboriginal girl who actually had the courage to come forward and report a sexual assault. And the way she was treated was unacceptable. I mean, when you read what she said, she very clearly said that she told her perpetrator or her attacker no. And the law is clear that no means no. So what we understand from this is that she did not give consent for this person to make any sexual advances on her. And yet the police continue to press her, make her feel guilty, her feel like it was her fault, make her feel and insinuate that she had asked for this behavior. And in the end, I don't know what any other woman would feel, but just completely discouraged and dismissed and disrespected. And in the end, this accuser or the accused or perpetrator was not charged.
You have a private member's bill that would make sexual assault awareness training mandatory for judges. Does this video show police need that training too? Look,
we know that there is a lot of parts of our justice system that need sexual assault law training and sensitivity training. And when we think of the fact that Aboriginal girls and women are 5 times more likely to experience sexual violence in our society, and they experience racism on top of that, we need to think about how they're treated when they come forward. We also know that only 1 in 10 Canadian women even come forward when they're sexually assaulted. And that isn't because, they're ashamed of what happened to them. I mean, that can play a part. But in fact, when we ask women why they don't come forward, they say they have no confidence in the system. So yes, we need to have training. When I introduced my private members bill, that's actually something that came up from groups that care about this issue and said, we should actually have training for everyone, including frontline RCMP officers. Mm-hmm. And there is some level of training happening in Canada, but we do need to have comprehensive training, and it does need to include sensitivity around issues of race. And this is a perfect example. When women that go into the system that are vulnerable, we cannot have situations where those who are dealing with them take advantage of that vulnerability.
Do you know where your bill's at now, and could it still be amended to include the RCMP?
Well, perhaps. I mean, this may not be the bill to do that. Maybe it is, but it does raise the awareness that we need training at all orders of the justice system. Interestingly, Quebec, the Justice Minister in Quebec has actually created a panel to talk exactly about this and give her recommendations on how we can treat victims that go into the system better right from the minute they walk in the door of the police, or walk in the door of a victim services center or a rape crisis center, go to police, and then right up into the courtroom. My bill happens to deal with judges because, frankly, judges are the most educated, the most experienced, and the most senior leaders in the justice system. And we still have problems where we hear things that judges say to victims in the courtroom, or they allow things to be asked of victims in the courtroom that are completely inappropriate and completely unacceptable, even according to the law. So we have people that are the most educated in the law, supposedly asking questions that are actually not even allowed under the law when it comes to sexual assault. So I started with the top because I thought these are the leaders, and they are the ones that manage the courtroom. They should shut these questions down when asked. And if this case, for instance, or any of these kinds of cases are appealed, we need judges to say what happened here is wrong. This woman should never have been questioned this way. And unfortunately, we don't have a situation in Canada where we have confidence that our courts actually understand all of the elements comprehensively and completely when it comes to sexual assault law.
Ms. Ambrose, we're going to have to leave it there, but I appreciate you taking some time for us.
No, thank you for your attention to this issue, and I hope that you can continue to raise awareness about the impact of sexual violence on Aboriginal women and girls, which is much higher incident than non-Aboriginal women in this country. And the issues around racism and other issues in the system affect Aboriginal women and girls disproportionately. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for continuing to raise this issue.
The ongoing meth crisis impacts communities across Canada. Today, authorities cracked down at a Saugeen First Nation after community members pushed for action. APTN's Ashley Branson was on the scene.
A lot of excitement happened in Saugeen First Nation today. On Monday, Band Council served eviction notices, but the residents failed to comply. And right now I'm standing outside one of the two houses that were served, and Chief and Council suspect crystal meth use. Today, Saugeen safety officers, Band Council, and along with community members rallied together to serve the residents another eviction notice with the RCMP on standby. We saw a few individuals being removed from the houses by Saugeen safety officers. I can confirm there was one arrest made by the RCMP while another young woman fled the scene. The residents that were found in this house behind me, they agreed to seek help for their addiction. Chief and Council say once the houses are vacant, proper authorities will inspect the houses, which could lead to them being demolished. But I'll have the full story for you in the coming days. Ashley Branson, APTN, National News, Saugeen First Nation.
To Ottawa now, where the Senate voted to send Bill C-262 to the Aboriginal Peoples Committee for review, giving the legislation, which would require Canada to align its laws with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, a chance to be passed into law before Parliament breaks for the summer on June 21st. The bill, which was introduced by MP Romeo Saganash in 2016, had been stalled in the Senate. Some accused Conservative senators of delaying the bill, reducing its chance of being passed. Senator Murray Sinclair says the bill's success is contingent on cooperation among senators and on the public's attention.
I think people should keep an eye on this. I want to say that the reason that this has moved along as expeditiously as it has in the last few months has been because Canadian citizens have stepped forward and called upon the senators of Canada to pay attention to this bill and get it to study stage at least.
The federal government is mulling the idea of declaring a climate emergency. More on that after the break. Here's a look at Saturday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. Showers and 9 above for St. John's. 1 degree warmer with rain in Halifax. Sunny and 4 for Nain. Snow and +3 for Cartwright. 16 in Montreal and Saguenay. Rain and 15 for Quebec City. Showers and 15 for Toronto. 18 under the sun in Ottawa. 12 in Thunder Bay. 11 with rain in Wawa. Snow and +2 for Churchill. 8 above for God's Lake. 11 for Winnipeg and Gimli. 12 under sunny skies in Dauphin. 14 for Saskatoon and North Battleford. 11 in Swift Current. 15 in Meadow Lake. 17 under sunny skies in Uranium City. Welcome back. The Arctic Council meets every 2 years, and traditionally they release a statement of agreed goals at the end of it. Not this time. The American delegation wouldn't sign a declaration that included the words climate change. We caught up with one of Canada's representatives to the Arctic Council. This from an unseasonably warm Iqaluit.
It's been a warm May in Iqaluit. We've had a record high, and look at this. Snowmobiles stranded on the land. No snow to use. Just to compare, this is Iqaluit in May 2016. Look at all that snow. This is the same stretch of road shot today. Pretty barren looking. Monica L. Kanayuk is the president of the Inuit Circumpolar Council. In that role, she attended the recent Arctic Council meeting, which had a surprise ending this year.
What they do at the end of this is have a declaration where all the member states agree to a declaration which would be binding on the work that will be done in the next 2 years. So apparently they've been doing this for over 20 years, and unfortunately the United States did not want any wording whatsoever with the words climate change, and that led to the declaration not being developed. And
Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, Sweden, and 6 different international indigenous organizations all wanted to put climate change in focus. Not the USA. That sets a precedent.
The fear is that other countries might also decide that this is something they don't also need to deal with.
El Kanayuk lives here in Iqaluit. She sees climate change firsthand.
You know, it's a reality. Climate is changing. We see it upmost here. We are the ones firsthand experiencing climate change. And it's not us that are creating the climate change.
The Arctic is warming, and a group dedicated to the Arctic can't find consensus for the first time ever. How do you fight an enemy that your alleged friends won't even admit is real? Ken Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Meanwhile, Canada could soon declare climate change a national emergency. Environment Minister Catherine McKenna tabled the motion for debate in the House of Commons. The motion comes after the United Nations released a dire report on greenhouse gas emissions. If Canada declares a national climate emergency, it recommits its promise to the Paris Agreement, which hopes to stop global warming. Also on Parliament Hill, Green Party leader Elizabeth May released a 20-point climate action plan. One of the points is to redesign greener buildings and boost the status of global warming.
Than human species We are in a climate emergency. Climate change is not, I want to repeat that, not an environmental issue. It's a massive security threat, and it needs to be dealt with by government at all levels as a security threat that requires taking bold action.
It's a collaboration that's literally music to the ears. Students in Thunder Bay composed a symphony. Our reporter Willa Fiddler was there for the debut performance with Thunder Bay's orchestra.
Lewis Chapman has been playing guitar for years, but right now he's feeling a little nervous about it. He's about to perform a solo piece with these guys, the Thunder Bay Symphony Orchestra. Chapman is one of the music students at Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School who recently wrote a symphony. Cree cellist and composer Chris Dirksen spent 2 days helping students put it together. Director of Operations at the Thunder Bay Symphony explains how they did it.
They talked about the melodies and which ones they prefer, and then they worked on those melodies. Chris took it away overnight and plugged it into her computer, came back the next day and started reworking the composition again.
We wrote it on guitars and then the cellist just put it into a symphony.
That symphony includes 30 professional musicians who performed the almost 6-minute piece called Rebellion in a school concert. Chapman said it's about standing up to tyrants, and inspiration for the melodies came from sounds he's heard before.
One of them was a battle theme that I've been working on. I envisioned war.
About halfway through the piece, all eyes and ears turned to Chapman and his guitar. It's a personal moment for him.
It was a song that I wrote for my late cousin Colin Roundhead and one of my good friends, Josiah Baird.
Chapman's mom, Sandra, said it was exciting to witness her son perform.
He loves his music, and I always tell him that sometimes it just won't take you places, but, you know, a mother can be wrong at times. I'm very proud of what he's done so far.
The Thunder Bay Symphony said educating students through music is an important part of their work.
We're trying to build some bridges and make sure that we're trying to make ourselves accessible to everybody in Thunder Bay, not just certain demographics.
Willow Fiddler, APTN National News, Thunder Bay.
What an amazing story. An all-new episode of APTN Investigates looks into abuse in the child welfare system, and it debuts tonight. We'll speak to the reporter right after the break. Here's the rest of Saturday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. 21 above for high level, 17 under sunny skies in Peace River. Showers in 13 for Medicine Hat, showers in 7 for Calgary and Lethbridge. A rainy day on the west coast, 19 for Campbell River and Vancouver, 22 in Bella Coola, 13 for Dease Lake, 18 under the sun for Smithers and Fort Nelson, 10 for Rock River, 15 with showers in Whitehorse, 20 above for Fort Liard and Trout Lake, 23 in Fort Simpson, 0 in Sax Harbor, plus 6 in Paulatuck, 13 in Colville Lake, 1 above in Baker Lake, minus 2 for Whale Cove. Minus 2 as well in Arctic Bay, minus 6 with snow in Resolute. Welcome back. Their stories are horrific. 2 Alberta men abused as children while in the care of the province's Child Welfare Agency. Now, as adults, they are seeking answers to what happened to them and, more importantly, how this could have happened. APTN National News reporter Chris Stewart produced his first episode of APTN Investigates called When Child Welfare Fails. Chris, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us a little bit about how this story came to you?
APTN executive producer Paul Barnsley contacted me Stephen Moore contacted him, and he wanted to share his story. He was a sex abuse survivor in the foster system, and he said he wanted his story to be told so that this doesn't happen to anyone else. So I went and I spent a day with him, and he told me his story on camera. It was very emotional, and I thank him for doing that, because it's not an easy thing to do. So I ended up doing a story for the APTN National News, and I just decided, and with the APTN Investigates, we decided that a 4-minute piece just wasn't doing this justice. So we decided to do a 30-minute APTN Investigates with him and other people. So that's how we got the ball rolling on this.
And so what did the men say happened to them in care?
For Stephen, when he was 5, he began being sexually abused by the boyfriend of his foster mother. He told me that he was abused sexually about once a week, sometimes more. And I just couldn't imagine being a 5-year-old kid having that happen to you. And for Clinton Marty, he was put into a Catholic home, and he told me that he was abused by nuns and a priest. He was forced to perform oral sex on them, and just the psychological damage that both of those young kids had to suffer, I just couldn't imagine being in their shoes.
Chris, can you tell us about the lawsuits against the provincial government?
It's a long story. There was an original lawsuit a long time ago that lawyer Robert Lee initiated. It was a class action. The judge took him off of that. A firm from Ontario took over, and there was a settlement. The victims who were part of that class action lawsuit, most of them don't feel that they received enough compensation for that. Robert Lee has 2 lawsuits ongoing, class actions. He says it's going to take years and years to finalize this. He's suing because he says that the government didn't properly, child welfare didn't sue the Alberta government for the damages to these children caused by foster care workers who didn't do their job properly, or foster parents who abuse these kids. He's also suing for loss of culture, lack of companionship, loss of their siblings and parents, and punitive damages as well.
Well, Chris, it looks like a devastating episode. Appreciate you taking some time to talk to us about it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And that episode will air in just a few minutes right here. And that is your APTN National News for this Friday. For much more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend.